Have you ever had the feeling that something is changing inside you, even though your life, on the outside, still seems exactly the same? This is an experience many people go through, but few manage to understand. After all, when we go through a long period of emotional, spiritual, and even physical exhaustion, it's natural to believe that restoration will only come when all the problems disappear. We think God is only acting when doors open, when circumstances improve, or when we finally feel that everything has fallen back into place. But what if God's restoration begins long before that? What if the first great miracle happens within your heart, before any change is visible to your eyes? If you've been feeling a weariness that seems to extend beyond your body, as if your soul is overwhelmed, stay with me until the end of this video. What you're about to discover may completely change how you interpret this phase of your life. Perhaps you're waiting for a grand sign from God, while He is already working silently within you. The truth is that God rarely works solely through circumstances. Throughout the Bible, we see that He first prepares the heart before transforming the surrounding reality. Before liberating a people, He forms leaders. Before fulfilling a promise, He strengthens faith. Before revealing a new path, He changes the way a person sees themselves, others, and even their own suffering. And this also makes sense when we look at what psychology teaches us about the human mind. After living for a long time in a state of alert, facing constant worries, anxiety, disappointments, and emotional exhaustion, our brain enters what is called survival mode. In this state, everything seems heavy. Small problems seem enormous. Hope diminishes. Peace disappears. The person just tries to endure one more day. But recovery from this process almost never happens suddenly. She usually starts off discreetly. First, the way you react changes. Then, the way you think changes. Gradually, fear loses its power. Anxiety ceases to control every decision. Small moments of peace begin to emerge, even if nothing around you has completely changed. Have you ever experienced this? Perhaps you are still facing the same challenges as weeks or months ago. Perhaps some prayers have not yet received the answer you hoped for. Perhaps the difficulties persist. But at the same time, there is a feeling that is hard to explain, as if something inside you is being rearranged, as if God is rebuilding parts of your soul that have been broken for so long. And do you know why this is so important? Because many people ignore the very first signs of restoration. They believe that God is only acting when something extraordinary happens. However, almost always, the extraordinary begins invisibly. God works in silence before acting publicly. He strengthens the inner self before transforming the outer self. He heals the root before showing the fruits. Perhaps that's exactly what's happening to you right now. Perhaps you don't yet see major changes in your life, but you no longer feel the same despair as before. Perhaps there are moments when an unexpected peace invades your heart without any logical explanation. Perhaps you are realizing that some worries have lost their power, not because the problems have disappeared, but because God is strengthening you to face them in a completely different way. And this could be the first major sign that your time of exhaustion is truly coming to an end. If you believe that God has already begun this transformation within your heart, write the following sentence in the comments. I believe that God is already transforming my inner self. I really want to know how many people are experiencing this silent process of restoration and faith. Now, there is a second sign that almost no one notices. In fact, many people even get scared when it starts to happen because they imagine that something is wrong, when in reality, it may be one of the clearest pieces of evidence that God is leading you to a new season in your life. Before moving on to the next sign, I wanted to make a very special request. If somehow this message reached you at the right time, don't let it pass by unnoticed. Write the phrase, I believe that God is already transforming my inner self in the comments. And if you wish, also share a little about your journey. Do you feel that you are still experiencing a time of exhaustion? Or do you believe that God has already begun this restoration process in your life? Often, your testimony may be exactly the answer that another person needed to find today. If this content resonates with you, please also leave a like. It may seem like a simple gesture, but it helps YouTube understand that this message is relevant and allows it to reach other people who are also facing difficult times, carrying burdens that no one sees. Perhaps someone who needs hope will find this video precisely because you decided to support this content. And if you enjoy reflecting on emotions in the light of the Bible, understanding how God works in both our spirit and our mind, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We still have many profound topics to explore together, always combining biblical principles and reflections that help us understand what we feel in the light of God's Word. Your participation makes far more of a difference than you might imagine. Every comment, every like, and every new subscription strengthens this community and allows this message to continue reaching people who may be praying at this very moment for a word of guidance, comfort, and hope. Now, because there's a detail that few people notice when God begins this work of restoration, let's continue. The next sign often confuses many people, and precisely for that reason, ends up being ignored. But when you understand what it means, your way of seeing this phase of your life can change completely to that of many. Have you ever noticed that sometimes God begins to change your life without immediately changing your circumstances? After a long period of exhaustion, many people expect everything around them to transform at once. But God often works differently. Before changing the path, He changes the heart. Before transforming destiny, He transforms desires. That's why people and environments that once seemed indispensable gradually begin to lose their power over you. What once held your attention no longer sparks the same interest. Conversations that fueled anxiety cease to make sense. Places that seemed essential begin to convey an emptiness that is difficult to explain. Psychology calls this process emotional reorganization. The Bible shows that God often removes what no longer fits the new season He is preparing. Not every departure is a loss. Some farewells are part of restoration. If you believe that God is clearing the way for something new, write in the comments, "I accept that God removes everything that hinders my restoration." Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. When God begins His transformation, something surprising happens. You begin to desire silence more than noise. Before, being alone seemed uncomfortable. Now, silence begins to bring peace. This happens because a tired mind needs to slow down to regain clear discernment. It was in silence that many servants of God found direction. Not because God only speaks when everything is quiet, but because a restless heart can hardly hear His voice. Little by little, anxiety loses ground and peace begins to occupy a place that previously seemed impossible. If this peace has begun to be born within you, right, I choose to remain in the peace that God is building in me. This peace also produces another important change. You realize that not every battle deserves your energy. For a long time, you may have felt the need to answer everything, convince everyone, and prove your worth. But spiritual maturity teaches that not every discussion needs a response. Jesus had the authority to answer every accusation, but chose silence when it was part of the Father's purpose. True strength lies not in winning every battle, but in knowing which ones God truly wants you to face. If this truth has spoken to your heart, right, I surrender my battles into God's hands. When this happens, hope begins to return even before circumstances change. Nothing around you seems different, but within you is born a confidence that hasn't existed for some time. Fear ceases to control every decision, and faith begins to occupy that space. You understand that God continues to work, even when your eyes cannot yet see the results. And looking back, you begin to realize that that difficult period was not a waste. God used the pain to strengthen your faith, mature your emotions, and prepare you for a new phase. Suffering ceases to be just a bitter memory and becomes part of a greater purpose. The strongest sign of this restoration is a peace that no longer depends on circumstances. Challenges still exist, but they no longer dominate your heart. You learn to rest in God as you continue walking. This is a peace that the scriptures describe, a peace that guards the mind and heart even amidst storms. But this new season also needs to be protected. Resting is not a lack of faith. Setting healthy boundaries, caring for your mind, remaining in prayer, and staying firm in the Word are attitudes that prevent you from returning to the same cycle of exhaustion. The biggest mistake many people make after being restored is returning to the same habits that made them sick. God transforms, but He expects each person to take care of what they have received. If this message resonated with you, Write in the comments. I believe God is leading me to a new season of restoration. If you made it this far, perhaps it didn't happen by chance. Perhaps God wanted to remind your heart that exhaustion isn't the final chapter of your story, and that even when you can't see it, He continues working silently, restoring what no one else can see. True transformation begins within us, and it is this work that sustains all the other changes yet to come. If this type of reflection strengthens your faith and helps you better understand your emotions in light of the Bible, subscribe to the channel. Here, every week, we discuss topics that combine biblical principles and reflections that can bring more clarity, hope, and direction to your walk with God. If this message resonated with you in any way, please leave a like. This small gesture helps this content reach other people who may be experiencing the same period of exhaustion and need to hear that there is still hope. And before I go, I want to make one last invitation. Write the phrase "this message was for me" in the comments. I will be very happy to read your comment and know that you walked with me to the end of this reflection. And if you'd like to delve deeper into this subject, there's a video here that complements everything we've discussed today. I'm sure it can help you understand even more how God works in restoring our emotions and our faith. Click on it and continue this journey with me.